As most families know, the mechanics of living with diabetes often become easier as time goes on. But with the busy routines of everyday life and diabetes management, there's one thing that can be easily overlooked, and that's our feelings about diabetes. Becoming aware of these hidden feelings can make both diabetes management and family life less stressful for all of us. And it's important to be aware that everyone in the family may experience different feelings about diabetes. But one thing is for sure, discussing these feelings can strengthen the family as a support system and make everyone feel less isolated. First of all, it's important to remember that kids don't often say what they feel, or sometimes even know what they feel. And no matter how well we think we know our kids, we may often find ourselves in the dark about what they're really thinking.
I wasn't happy about it. I was mad, and I kept saying to my mom, like, every time I would get frustrated about it, I would say, like, why am I the one that has to be, everything has to be wrong with me? Like, my brother and sister don't have anything big wrong with them, so it wasn't like something, like, I didn't understand why it was me, why I had to have everything wrong with me.
It bothers me to know that I can't live without medication. It really does. It bothers me a lot to know that, like, if I was stranded on a desert island, I would die. And so it does. I mean, I think it makes you feel a little more fragile than other people to some extent, just because of all this, all this stuff that you have to do to kind of keep yourself healthy and keep yourself alive. And, you have to wake up at 3 in the morning to check your blood sugars and things like that. It does make you feel fragile.
I understand what my body feels like when I'm low, and they have no idea. So if they're trying to tell me to do something, if I feel high, for instance, I know what to do. They have no idea, but they try to tell me what I should be doing, even though I know how to take care of it. That's kind of annoying.
The past couple times, mine hasn't been exactly where it should be. So I get not nervous about going to get it, not for myself, because I know we'll fix it, but for my mom, because she just gets real worried about it when things aren't going well. So I don't want her to get, it's more not for me to be nervous about the A1C, but for my mom's own sake about being nervous about it.
Once we become aware of our children's feelings, it's easier to help them find healthy ways of dealing with them.
I write a lot in my journals and stuff. Like, I put, like, what's wrong. Like, if it's personal, I don't have to tell anyone, but I'm still saying it. So it makes me feel a lot better because, like, if I have this overwhelming secret that I can't tell anybody, but I can write it down in a journal. Don't laugh at me.
We're not laughing. I'll explain in a minute.
That I write it down in a journal, I'm telling someone, but that someone can't speak. And it's like, gets it off my chest so I don't feel overwhelmed anymore.
And sometimes I talk to my cats about it, because I can't talk back or anything, and they really listen.
I ended up getting myself under control, but for a while my blood sugars were really out of control, and it wasn't even a conscious thing I was doing. I think it was just that I was so angry about having diabetes that I didn't want to have to deal with it at all. So I just would let it go and not pay attention to it. But eventually I got into talking to someone about it, usually my mom, and ended up venting it all out, and now I'm getting my blood sugars back under control.
I started a diary after I got diabetes, and it really helped writing down my feelings and how I felt, and I put my numbers in there, and it always made me feel a lot better.
As kids get older, the issues related to diabetes can change. So it's important to continue age-appropriate diabetes education. We also need to remember that kids mature at different rates and need to take on diabetes management responsibilities as they are ready for them. And though we know that kids need to learn from their own experiences, they will sometimes still need us as parents to jump in and lend a hand. Even keeping a logbook with them can help.
I think that's important for a parent to realize, is that sometimes the child that's independent someday is just tired and moody, and the parent has to just step in and say, look, I'll test your blood sugar for you, I'll give you your shot, and take that responsibility off and give them a little break for a while.
I hated coming here to get the A1C done because I didn't want to see what it was. I didn't want to know because I knew I cheated. I knew it was going to be high. I knew it wasn't going to be what it's supposed to be. So I wasn't happy with myself about that. But the same time, I had to move on. It was the way that I learned, the way that I taught myself that, you know, your blood sugars shouldn't be high. My parents could tell me that over and over again. Doctors could tell me that over and over again, but it wasn't going to sink in until I learned for myself. And now I know that when my blood sugars are high, I have no energy. I have not as much energy as if it was good. It's not, and it doesn't feel as good for me to be high. So I'd prefer to be normal, and if I'm low, I don't like being low either. So it's just something that I had to learn on my own.
Being a parent of a child with diabetes can produce its own set of emotional challenges. Becoming aware of these sometimes unconscious feelings can help us to cope better. We also need to be aware that it's easy to telegraph both positive and negative feelings to our kids without even realizing it.
Well, I feel very uncomfortable talking to the people who are angry because I'm not angry. And then I try to explain to them that, you know, I think their anger is hurting their child. I think their fear is hurting their child. I think they overreact and it hurts their child. Your child is sitting there.
And they'll telegraph that to their kids.
Oh,
even if they say
absolutely.
nothing.
They pick up on these cues. And if a mother overreacts to a low blood sugar or whatever, that kid all of a sudden gets upset.
It just never ends. You don't get a vacation from it, so to speak. Your life is, I would say, surrounded by her health care. Sometimes it's tiring to figure out numbers, make sure that she took insulin, make sure that she's eating right, and checking up on her. So it's exhausting.
It's a high maintenance disease. So you get to the point where once you learn about diabetes, you realize, I can do this. I can figure out the food. I can, figure out how to give him insulin. I can do all the physical parts of taking care of his diabetes. What ends up happening is that tends to become so routine that you don't realize all the emotional stuff that maybe you keep inside.
I just felt that, maybe it was something I did when I was pregnant. Somehow it was my fault that, she got diabetes. There was a lot of anger. I thought, why not me? Why her? Since, she was so young at the time. So it was a lot of anger and hurt.
Catherine doesn't get a whole lot of shots. Her blood sugars aren't that high that often. But there are days when I think, I couldn't give this kid one more shot today. I couldn't do it. And I think it's tougher on me to inject her than it is for her to get the injection sometimes, because I see it. Sometimes she doesn't see them because they're in her back, on her backside. So I think some days I couldn't do this one more time today. I'm so glad this is the last time. But that doesn't happen very often, and it's just my concern for her. But she's not bothered by it. So I don't know why I'm bothered by it, but I think it's, you're not supposed to inflict pain in a child. And it's not that painful, but to me it's like, it's something, it goes against your mother instinct here.
We all have different parenting styles, and these differences can increase family tensions. Building a team approach between parents can help to minimize the stress that comes from living with diabetes.
It's like, can you do Catherine this morning? Because
well, sure I can. Would you like me to? Yes, I will.
It's that kind of thing. Like, then I get to sleep maybe an extra 10 minutes sometimes, but he needs it too, so it's kind of like that.
I'm probably not quite as good as exact measuring for his food. I might round off a little bit, whereas Lisa will be very specific and exact with both food and insulin dosages. So I get corrected occasionally for my judgment, but I accept that.
I think it's more important to understand that each person is different, and you have to accept the way that they want to deal with their diabetes. You have to be there, willing to help them improve in their treatment of diabetes, but you can't do it for them. You can't try to run their life.
When diabetes becomes the focus, brothers and sisters have a tendency to get overlooked. A sibling might start acting out in subtle ways or even experience feelings of guilt for resenting the amount of attention their sister or brother is receiving. Acknowledging these feelings and encouraging them to be more involved can keep siblings from feeling left out.
I have probably gotten a lot more attention than the other kids. some of it negative, some of it attention I just don't want, you know, because it gets really old when your parents are following you around going, you look a little pale. Is your blood sugar low? It's like, no, I'm pale because we're Scottish.
I used to feel like I was given less attention than Chrissy was sometimes, but it just seems like less of an issue now, and, you know, I understand that she has some special needs, and I just, you know, I'm okay with that now.
I do remember, however, that we went to a family camp, family diabetes camp, and they had a separate session for the siblings, and Nathan and Daniel went. And afterwards, Nathan shared with me some of the things that he had said, and I felt horribly guilty, like I had neglected him and had not given him the correct attention that he needed. But then a couple of years later, I mentioned it to him, and he had forgotten all about it. So well, he had said things like, well, I resent it when Chrissy is eating things that make her go high, and so then it disrupts the balance of the family, or when she's not being particularly careful, and so suddenly we all have to focus on her to fix the problem, and he resented that.
We often tend to blame high or low sugars for our child's negative behaviors. But we need to keep in mind that a child with diabetes is a child first, and some negative behaviors may just have to do with being a kid.
When my sugars are out of range, I can get really nasty and tired sometimes, and like my brothers would run away from me when I'm low. They're like, run for the hills, because I get really nasty.
And a lot of times when we can't figure out why she's behaving the way she is, we'll test her blood first, which really irritates her a great deal, but a lot of times it explains why she's not reacting the way we would expect her to react in certain things. It's just because her sugars are out of.
But we also have to hold on to the fact that she is a child, so that everything, every emotion that she displays isn't because of the diabetes. So you got to run that balance. Okay, she's acting mad. Is it because something happened at school? Is it because she has a low sugar, or is it she's just having a normal kid day?
So at least it's one thing you can do is you can like take one thing off the playing field. If it's not the diabetes, you can at least work to the next thing. And if it is, then you can correct that, and hopefully the attitude goes away too. Sometimes.
I remember when Chrissy was very young and her blood sugar sometimes would be suddenly high, and I would have to try and figure out what did we do that made this blood sugar go high, and I couldn't find a reason why it had gone high, and I'd say, now I need to remember this, because when she's an adolescent, she is going to have those days where she's not going to know what exactly she has done that has made her blood sugar go high, and I need to be patient and understand that there are times when no matter how hard you try, you don't always do as well as you'd like to do.
And don't forget, you don't have to be the only support for your child. When you need a break, there are islands of safety with people eager to help you, such as neighbors, extended family, support groups, diabetes camps, and of course your diabetes care team.
Diabetes can trick us every day. You can eat the same thing, have the same activity level that you did the day before, and the results will be totally different. So just when you think you're getting it figured out, things change. So we try and find a happy medium, knowing that as long as you're both doing the best you can, you do the best for that day, and then you wake up fresh the next day and you start again. And you don't beat yourself up for anything you've done, because that's probably the worst thing with diabetes, because then you feel bad and it's just a vicious cycle. So you put the day away and you start fresh, and you learn from each day.
Although diabetes isn't always easy to deal with, understanding and communicating our feelings as individuals can strengthen the family as a whole and help us to stay in balance.